Friends, family, and keepers of the faith, welcome to another Del Boy blog. And as always, I'm going to date stamp this. It's year 5 blog 15, or in legacy numbers, it's blog number 223, and it's the 31st of the 5th, 2026. Yes, last day of May. Had to think then for a moment. And therefore we start the new month, and hopefully we have a good month. I mean, I always look at things generally on a day-by-day basis, but sometimes, I'll start going, what's the next month gonna bring? And, with the weather as it is, maybe we'll have a good one, Weather's on everybody's minds, I think, at the moment. We're a nation, I believe, where we moan about the weather. We moan about most things, but we moan about the weather an awful lot. And we've been crying out over the winter months for brighter days, longer days, better weather, all that sort of stuff. This week, they call it a heat wave. If you've ever been in other countries, you'll know it's not a heat wave. But for us, it is. It's like anything. Some people are used to, that will turn around and say, oh, you're moaning about the snow and everything. We have snow for months and months and months. We never moan about it, blah, 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 blah. I get it. It's where you live. It's what you're used to. So, there is that. But I have to say, I've not had too bad a week when it comes to the weather. It has been warm. It's been very warm in this room. I'm more worried about my mother. Now, she's, I've seen her have sweat on her head, and she's complained that it's hot and all of that sort of stuff, to the point where I had to do something about it. I'll talk about that when we get to my mum, but the weather's been on our minds, let's just say that. There hasn't been much else on my mind, to be quite honest. I've been mostly concentrating on my mum, and a lot on my back. I aim to get back to work as fast as possible. It's not nice to not have a regular sort of a week. You don't base a regular week around being off. You base it around normality, and the normality of a person of my age is to go to work and then have a private sort of like normal relaxing after work sort of like day for yourself, and I don't have that. So, it's filled with doing jobs around the house, exercising to do my back, watching crappy daytime TV sometimes, that sort of thing. And that's not normal, I'm not retired yet, all of that sort of stuff. So anyway, we'll get the news out of the way. That's what we should do, shouldn't we? So as I said, in the news, the heat wave is in the news. It says here, the heat wave continues, because I mentioned it last week, with several amber and red alerts across the week and country. After effects are several open water accidental deaths. Yes, those have been in the news. People dying by going into water, whether that be lakes, the sea, all of that sort of stuff. Water restrictions have started to come into effect. My God, this really does annoy me. Now, this does annoy me. Now, we've got one of the worst, I believe, water companies. It probably isn't, but to me it is. Thames Water. They've been in the news in a bad way during the winter about the use of their money, to make pipes better and repair leaks and all of that sort of stuff. All our bills have gone up, and some people feel that the money has not gone up because of the units we're using, but to pay off their debts, because they are in debt. But here we are, water restrictions. We've had 1 week of hot weather. We've had snow, rain, everything during the winter months, reservoirs that my father was somebody who measured the water at at a reservoir because of the fishing that went on there, and he would turn around and also state, "Don't understand this reservoirs stuff. We have water that we order to fill the reservoir because it's private, but as far as we're concerned, he thought the same. Water and irrigation and all that sort of stuff should mean that we don't have these things in the 2000s, because that's when he was alive." And I agree with him. And here we are at 2026, 1 week into a heat wave. And, heat wave, it's gone up to, in the 90s, it might have topped at 100. And for 1 week, and already we're getting "don't water your garden with hose pipes." Not quite a ban yet, but not far from it. So yeah, that does annoy me. So I will have an opinion on that, and you've got it. The next news story was Youth Unemployment Initiative. The government has drafted former Marks and Spencer's chief exec to tackle the country's rising NEET. Now, NEET stands for Not in Education, Employment or Training. The country's rising NEET youth crisis. So yeah, good thing. I mean, all I can say about it is when I left school, there was the youth training scheme, the YTS. It wasn't much good. A lot of people thought it was worse than the apprenticeship scheme, and the apprenticeship scheme was in effect for years and years and years before the YTS. Again, some people looked at it as cheap labour. The YTS definitely was cheap labour. Take it like this: I went into where I was for a YTS, and 90% of the people that were in a YTS in this big company let go at the end, 10% kept. I knew of 3 people out of the lot that went there that got a job. The rest was into a dole, or they found a job before the YTS ended. I ended up working, looking around for a job for 4 or 5 months, finally having to go to a supermarket to get a job, and thought to myself, wow, with what my knowledge of what I knew about computers, and my O-levels that were in woodwork and all of that sort of stuff, got me shelf stacking, basically. And I wondered to myself, is that the end for me? Have I left school with no skills? Thank God that I went to work for Lloyd's Bank, doing credit analysis, believe it or not, for 6 years. Yeah, 6 years, 7 years maybe. And that put you in good stead for office work, which is generally what I wanted from the start. It was just a 3-year mess for me before I got that job, and one that a lot of crap went on, Don't think that's a terrible word to use. It was just a period of time that I'm glad I don't put on my CV anymore. I talk about it in a learning period, is what I call it. And I think a lot of people that are on YTS do that if they didn't get a job at the end. It was a learning experience. Bit about sport now, football. Arsenal lost in the UEFA Champions League final to PSG in a penalty final. And Liverpool have sacked their head coach, Arne Slot, I think his name is, Arne Slot, in a management shake-up. So, if you're an Arsenal fan, apologies. I hope you had a good match watching it. I saw the highlights. Liverpool, sad, I suppose, really. After 2 years, I think did well last year. Did terrible, I suppose, for a club that was top of the Premiership. for their position that they got this year, a disappointment. Obviously, companies of a certain, clubs of a certain level have high expectations. I suppose it's the best time to do it now. You've got this hiatus now for a couple of months to regroup. So doing it at the end is better than changing a manager mid-season. That must be very jarring. I've seen it plenty of times. Politics, so the last thing. Scottish politics, really, and not really very political either. It's about Nicola Sturgeon. She's broke down close to tears in an interview over the SNP money embezzlement scandal, constantly stating it had nothing to do with her. It was her husband, who is now in jail. It was mentioned last week. I still look at it as, I think my mother knew where my dad's money was. They had a joint account, I know, later on. How she therefore would not know, I don't know. £1,000 pens and things like that. So I have to look at it with a bit of scepticism, but there could be very much truth in it that she knew nothing. But, what can you say about it? So that's the news. Glad that's out of the way. Did it very quick. I think we did that in about 5 minutes. So we'll move on to my week, and my week as a whole that involves my mother, and what goes on in this house. Nothing scary or bewildering. As you know, I'm not at work, so I've been concentrating on doing the exercises. I tried to do a bit more walking, but it was difficult with the heat, mostly. But my back, it has been bad on occasions, and it's sometimes very difficult when you're having to change your mum. The rolling back and forth prolongs probably a problem where I should be resting and getting my back sorted. But the tablets are helping, but there's a lot of tablets to take, and your body builds up a tolerance. So I need to speak to a doctor about that, and I've already told work that I'll be doing that, because as I mentioned last week, one of the things that we're doing now is I'm having a weekly meeting with work. That was supposed to be Wednesday, but was changed to Thursday. But on Thursday, I turned up at the meeting, and the lady I was supposed to speak to, which was my manager, people manager, didn't turn up. I was there for 30 minutes, sitting in this chair, doing nothing, looking at my phone mostly while I waited. And then I left a message and got a phone call about 20 minutes later, and we had a phone conversation about it all, and that went very, very well. I told them that progress was slow but better. I will say this, I am better. The pain is in bits and bobs, depending on what I'm doing. Sitting in a chair for too long comes back. Sitting in a different chair and getting up helps. Rolling my mother back and forth hurts. Walking helps. It's like that. And, any little jarring thing, or take it like this. If I cough, I feel my back. And therefore I don't put any force into coughing, because it hurts so much. Sleeping has been difficult with the heat, but not impossible. I've been trying to go to bed earlier, but not getting to bed until later. But once I am asleep, I'm having a good rest, according to my phone as well. And my phone, my watch is logging my sleep activity. I seem to be restless, but sleeping longer, which is good, isn't it? Really, sleeping longer, that's what we need. It's just I need REM sleep. Not quite getting to REM status for long enough is one of the problems. Not eating well. I will say that. There's a lot of jobs that I have to do after my sister goes that really makes it difficult to fit in where you eat. Take it like this. At 5 o'clock, I'm prepping what I need to do at 5 o'clock. Between 5 and 6, my mother's meal. Between 6 and 7, my mother's watching Turner and Hooch, and I'm doing the washing up of that particular routine. And 8 o'clock till 9 o'clock, I'm mostly watching soaps with my mum. And then she might want to watch something in the 9 o'clock period, like the darts or a murder mystery, for which I then turn the telly off or take away any newspaper, hopefully around the 9:30 time, but it's generally been around 10. And this has an effect, because where I was getting my mum to bed at 9 o'clock, if it's now 10 o'clock, I have less time to do stuff. I'm generally in bed about 11ish, and I'm up at 6:30, 6:45. So you can imagine I should be getting just about the right amount of sleep, but it could be longer. And that 1 hour extra is a bit of a bind. And my sister and I's initial thoughts were, the longer my mother is asleep during the day, the more she's going to be awake at night, which is a valid observation that I saw myself. I just thought to myself, getting her to stay awake during the day would be better, but apparently that's not quite so. I'm forever giving my mum her breakfast in the morning with her eyes shut, and standing and being around her when she's got a cup of tea in case she scolds herself. These are all things that a carer has to do and gauge, but we'll talk about that later on. So at the meeting, I heard a little thing about possible changes. And these are good ones, don't get me wrong. I've been doing a lot of analysis work lately. And one of the things that I always said, even 4 years back, was we as analysts used to be talking to the stakeholders rather than the managers telling us what the stakeholders have said. I said to them, the danger of this is that it's like Chinese whispers. You get the data, you get the value of being at the meeting, you're getting more management skills from doing that. And then when you pass it to us, if you get one thing wrong, we get the whole thing wrong, because as analysts, we analyze that data you've given to us that was given to you at the meeting, along with the words about it. Perfect example, if a manager passes you a report and says, I've just been to this meeting, and this is the data that we've got, and there is some missing data because they're behind with this process, and we've given them an ultimatum of 2 weeks, so it's before the next meeting, and we'll have the correct data. So my answer to that as an analyst would be, so we're not doing anything for 2 weeks then? No, we analyse what there is there now. Okay, so when we get this other spreadsheet of data, is my next question. Do we merge it and then do it again, or do we base it on this is just the extra data? It's then totally up to you is the answer to that. Get that bit wrong and you've basically ruined the whole lot. You got to start again. So you can imagine, there's been a few little talks, and those were quite good, and I really enjoyed those. I suppose the next section is the only other section, which is my mother. What can I say about it? Well, she's been hot, and that's to be expected. I don't know if I can show this. I therefore look at Amazon, to see what can be done. So here is a media playback, and you can see what I bought So I bought this 4-in-1 portable air conditioning, mini air conditioner with 3 mist levels and 3 speeds. It's got a tank that holds 1,200 millilitres. It evaporates, and it's a light as well. And you can see the price, $33.99. It's fairly cheap. It's cheap and cheerful, and you know it's going to have a lot of faults. Although it's got an okayish rating. So this turned up on Tuesday, and we've been using it at night ever since. It has a timer. It's got a mister, and I don't mean a game console. It's got a mister where water turns into mist. It's got a water tank, and you can put ice in there if you want. And it's got a drip tray system, which is at the bottom. And it's fairly okay for the price. It's noisy. That's the thing. But you expect that in these portable units. They're like oscillating fans. They're rarely quiet. So they're noisy. And on the whole, I've asked my mother, do you feel hot? She's gone, no, ever since we used it. But she was hot on Monday night. She was saying, oh, it's hot, it's uncomfortable, etc., etc. So, yeah, hopefully that was a good purchase for my mother. And, of course, I bought that. And there's not much more to say. So, really, what else can I talk about? So there was the heat and the air conditioning unit. Let me just have a think for a moment. I'll be back in a second. As always, I've got a few things going on, and I've got lost on what I was doing. I don't know if I did this. So I do remember I was talking about my air conditioning unit that I bought. That's it there. And it's great but noisy. But that doesn't matter because when the evening comes along, it shuts off. You put water in it. It's got a drip tray at the bottom. You can put ice cubes at the top. You can see it from the picture. It's remote control. What a waste of time a remote control is for this unit. But for the money, you know, anything that I can do to help my mum, I'll do. And that gets on to my mum, and she's had a okayish time, but she's been hot. She always hates the rolling over, you know, to change her pad and the sheets that we have to put underneath, and changing of the pajamas and all of that sort of stuff. And we do it 3 times a day. It used to be 4 with the care package that we had. But we can't do that, you know. My sister does stay here an hour longer, but that you know, we don't want her to be in a horrible sticky situation by the time we get to the morning. And of course she would have had her evening meal at that point, gone through a point where she'd have had tea in the evening and her breakfast in the morning. So you can imagine the morning one is the longest one that we do. But other than that, my mother's only other complaint was yesterday, where she said she had a headache. Now, I give her a medicine. My sister gave her a shot earlier of penicillin. It's liquid penicillin, so it's a syringe that goes into the mouth and it pushes it straight down the throat. She slept, and when she woke up, she felt better. So the headache could have been because of the heat. The air conditioner is on generally in the afternoon. In the morning, it's not too bad. We have the curtain semi-drawn, so the sun doesn't shine through. So, yeah, my mother's had a relaxing as best as possible. I'm sure she's fed up by now. We do some little exercises, but we don't get her out of bed as much as I'd like. But my sister and I agreed we need to do bed exercises before we can try and get her out of bed for every day, if you see what I mean. So I think that's the right thing to do, although I don't want her to waste away. So, you know, it's something that's constantly on my mind and on my sister's mind. And when it comes to care, I think it's gold standard, as best as you can get from family members wanting to help. We always think to ourselves, we do a damn good job. We learnt an awful lot from the carers. You couldn't ask for more without having a care package, and the care package would be a good £1.50 a month, which we just don't have. So, you know, it's good care. At the same time as I bought this air conditioning unit, my sister said it would be a good idea to get what they call a spit cup. Now, they're not very expensive. I don't know if I can show one here, because they're quite interesting to know. So let me just have a look. If I go to my orders, yeah, there it is, and then show you it, you'll see what I mean. There you are. Quite cheap, $10.99. It's got a handle. There you are. You put it under their mouth and they spit. Now, you'll probably ask, well, why do you need that? Cleaning your teeth. That's what it's for. We used to put a bowl underneath her mouth, and it's full of the water that you cleaned her with. Not exactly ideal. So this spit cup with a handle is really quite good. And, you know, it helps an awful lot. So I bought that at the same time. So I'll put that now to the camera. There we go. And just let you know that that's helped a little bit as well. Trouble with my mum is that when you clean her teeth, she doesn't spit very well. If you give her water, she swallows. You know, we tried to do the little facial features like, Mum, swill your mouth like this. You know, she gets it. But whenever you present a glass or a sippy cup to her that she drinks from on a regular basis, she thinks in her brain, swallow. So these are the headaches, the headaches, yeah, and we get through them. That's it. Hope that was okay, because we're now going to get to the shout outs. And you know, it's been a hot week, so less people will be here commenting, but every single comment love to have. I noticed that one I've lost, it's from Martroid. Apologies to Martroid. I know that you comment every week. It got lost. I don't know how it went, but I'm starting to take photographs when they're there, so that I can read them out. So that won't happen again. The last time it happened, he printed the following week what he said, and I actually had a photograph of that, and it was going to be read out anyway, but this one got lost. So apologies. He did comment. It's always lovely when I get a comment from him. Apologies, it's gone. It's the only one that's gone. All the others are there, and absolutely fantastic. All the people that have watched. I really feel great when people watch this. One other thing that I did this week, and I should have mentioned it before, I took photographs of the garden as I've been doing the pots this week. And my mum loves the photographs because I can zoom in, but I wanted to do a video. So I got my phone out and I did it landscape, and showed her the rose bushes and all the pots I'd done, and this hanging basket. But I thought to myself, do you know what? I could do a short. So I did it in portrait mode, which is what the shorts like to be in, because it's under 2 minutes. And I did this little video of the rose bush, which, by the way, looks absolutely stunning, right? I've never seen so many roses come out, right? And then I did all the pots as I've done them so far, and this one hanging basket. And then I showed it to my mum, and she loved it. She went, "Oh, aren't those gorgeous?" And I said, "Yeah, Mum, and it's just coming up with the hanging basket." And she went, "Oh, that's lovely. Look at that, and those lovely flowers." And I went, "Yeah, Mum, I bought those flowers last week." And then I went, showed her all the pots, you know, what flowers were left, and told her that there was a couple of hanging baskets out the front that I need to do. And she said, thank you. And she loved it. And I thought, well, I'll upload that. I used to do a gardening video a couple of years back now. But it was really nice to do that. It showed the work I've got to do in the garden as well, weeding and mowing the lawn and all of that. But she loved it. And my sister thought it was a great idea as well. So that was brilliant. So, yeah, a couple of things that have come out is this blog, and I did that. And and my intentions was to do a stream as well. But I noticed that the nights that I wanted to do it, other people were doing a stream. And I'm working on a best time to do it. I think a Monday might work quite well. It never used to be good on a Monday because of work, but because I'm not at work, I might do a couple. So before I go back, so look out for those. Might be interested to do that. And the reason for that is another thing that I need to bring into what I did this week. I had a couple of opportunities to play this game called Hellforged. Again, I don't know whether I can show a picture of it. I'll try and open it. Here it comes. There we go. Go to my library and go to Hellforged. And I'll drop this to that picture again. So there's my Steam account. Look, you can see Hellforged is there. And it's a sort of a vampire survivor type game. And you'll see down here it says Hellforged playtest. And that's because if you go to the store page, there it is. If I pause that, you'll see that there's a playtest now live, and you can apply for playing this game before it comes out, because the planned release date is 2026. There's a picture of it going, look. It's really quite nice. It's all over YouTube. A lot of people are enjoying it. It's got a few problems that occasionally when you play it, it comes up with a little box that says, is there anything you want to report bug list wise? I've mentioned that when you get the cards come up about equipment that you, or abilities that you pick up in this game, there's no re-roll. So you're only allowed the 3 that come up, and there's nothing for you to change. So I'm pretty sure that is something that's in every Vampire Survivor type game. And it's going to be in a future release. So there's that. Put that down and go to camera. There we go. There we go. So yeah, it's that I've been playing, because I can play that in little spurts, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And it takes my mind off of things. So yeah. So the shout out's lovely. Everybody who watches it, thank you. And we'll go on now and read out some of the comments. And the first one is from Carl Todd. These are in no particular order. Oh, sorry, I didn't read out the shout-outs, did I? So the shout-outs are Carl Todd, Denny, Stephen Taylor, Wee Bob, Colin Jones, a.k.a. Ponder, and Ian Hill, the Ramblings. And the first one I'm going to read out is Carl Todd. Salute to all those people, and thank you very much. Carl Todd says, hi, Del. I'm finally back, and I had a quite long operation, 5 hours, and a stay in the hospital. I meant to write last week, but I was just feeling too tired. I know exactly how that feels, Carl, and I believe you mentioned it in the last time you wrote, and I wished you well and hoped you would keep me updated. It says here, feeling better now, and had a checkup with the surgeon last Friday, a week or so, and hopefully I'll be fully recovered. I hope that things are going well for you and your mum, and hopefully you're now relieved that everything's going quite well. I call this week a average week. It's not been challenging or anything. There's been a few little things, but nothing to write home about, nothing for this diary. A couple of quick questions. Since Spider Noir has been released, I wondered if you follow the expanded Spider Universe characters, or do you just stick to the classic Peter Parker Spider-Man? Do you have a favourite character in the expanded Spider Universe? Yeah, you might not be aware of this, but Spider-Man's now been around for, let me think, 60 plus years, nearly 70. I don't think he's quite celebrating his 70th year. And in that time, there have been other universes created. There's one they called Ultimate Spider-Man, which turned into what they call Miles Morales. That's another character, so that you've got now two main Spider-Men. But there was the whole Clone Saga, and the Clone Saga brought out another one called Ben Reilly, who is Scarlet Spider. And then, of course, the whole multiverse expanded. And you had Spider-Punk, Spider-Gwen, Spider-Ham, Spider-Man UK, Spider-Man India. The list went on to over 70, I would say, different Spider-Man, of which certain ones were given their own comic for a short mini series type thing and appeared in the main block of Spider-Man comics. So have I got a favourite? Now, Spider-Man Noir is just been released. I know of it. I haven't seen it yet. I'm quite excited to see it. You could see it in two different ways. You could see it in black and white, totally, or you can watch it in colour. You've got Nicolas Cage as Peter Parker Spider Noir. It's set obviously very early, so the 30s and 40s, possibly even earlier, in a sort of a way like the old gangstery cop type series. So he doesn't have a red and blue costume and web shooters and all of that sort of stuff. It's very much a crime orientated thing, but he's got spider powers. So he can climb and stick to walls. It just doesn't have the technology to make things like web shooters and things. Or that was, should I say, that was the comic. I haven't seen the series. Have I got a favourite? I suppose the closest to a favourite I've got is the Scarlet Spider, which is Ben Reilly. Ben, by the way, is Peter Parker's middle name and his uncle's main name. Riley was, I think, the maiden name of Aunt May. So there she was, Aunt May Parker, but as an unmarried lady, she was Riley, an Irish connection. So Scarlet Spider, when he was banished during the Jerry Conway run of the 70s, I think 74, 75, definitely issue 149, he was presumed dead, sort of buried, but survived and decided to leave New York and have his own life. He thought it was best, but came back when Aunt May was close to death in issue 400. That's Ben Reilly, the Scarlet Spider, and that would probably be my favourite. Hopefully that's a good answer for you. I could have gone with Spider-Man UK, but he died very early on. Would have been an interesting character, but they decided to kill that one off quite quickly. So you've got another question, and it says, the new James Bond game has been released and seems to be getting good reviews. Is it something you would be interested in? Well, a James Bond game, I've looked at them during the 8-bit era and they weren't particularly great. I remember the longest one I played, I think, was A License to Kill. No, it was The Living Daylights, should I say. No, it wasn't. Just trying to think now. Yeah, it was the last Roger Moore one, A View to a Kill. A View to a Kill. Yeah, that was the 8-bit one that I played the most, and it wasn't particularly brilliant. I played a few on a few consoles where they were a mix of the different films. They weren't particularly great either. But GoldenEye on the Nintendo 64 I played a little bit of and is highly regarded. Even now they call that the quintessential game test to see if your emulator is working very well, because it was a very demanding game being done in 3D on a console that tried to do it as best as possible 3D, but didn't succeed all the time because of its underpowered nature. And then I didn't really play James Bond films on the Xboxes and stuff. I'd put them on because I might rent them, but didn't play them for very much because they were just derivatives of a first-person shooter type games. So, is this game something I'm interested in? Well, what I know about it is it is a stealthy game. But the problem with a stealth game, even as one from a company that's done the Hitman series, and that's a very, very good series that I've really appreciated through the years, the Hitman series. The problem with it is it doesn't really suit James Bond. This is supposed to be a James Bond that's very early, before he became a 00 agent in Casino Royale. And as another YouTuber said, I think it was Worth a Buy, if it's stealth, why have you turned X-ray vision on? So you're hiding behind a wall, you turn it on and you can see the characters moving behind the brick walls. How can you fail in stealth if you know where they are? The whole idea of something being fun is what could be around this brick wall? What could be behind this door? You lose that because you can see outlines moving because you've got X-ray vision. It's bad. Now, I don't totally agree with Worth a Buy. He damned it, but I would damn it as well for the price and the condition of the game as it is at the moment. There are others that are saying it's really, really fun, but you can't hide fun behind its big problems. Worth a Buy mentioned that he's a 00 agent, and he walks into an armory type thing, as you do in the films, and he has a conversation with Q, right? Someone like Q. And there's a desk full of stuff, and he tells you can only take 2. Well, no, I agree with what Worth a Buy said. I'll take the bloody lot. The world's in jeopardy. What are you only limiting me to 2 for? You choose the wrong 2, and you're in the not in a good place when you have to do the mission. So that doesn't seem right, because the other thing he explained, because I haven't got the game, is most of the stuff is handheld, so you can put them in your pockets. So why are you limited to 2? One in each pocket seems a bit poor, isn't it? But he mentioned in his review how fun the getting these gadgets was, but he damned it on the fact that you only are able to have 2. Like, it's almost like you got 2 hands, so you don't need any more than 2 gadgets. But you could carry a phone, you could wear a wristwatch. It does seem to be a bit of a poor thing to choose in your concept of a game. So yeah, it's got its problems. If it was given to me, I'd play it. Am I going to buy it in a sale? How much would I pay for it? Less than a tenner. It wouldn't be my real type of game, really. I've got a great nostalgia for all of this, for the film scores of James Bond, and of course the films. The games, less so. So that's my answer to that. And Just going to wet my face. It's gotten hot again, and I must admit I've got to stretch my legs. So I'll remember where I am. So definitely only just done Carl Todd and answered his questions. I will just end it quickly. He says, take care, mate. And I definitely will. And I'll be back in a moment. So I just checked, and my sister's now feeding my mum her dinner. So it won't be very long now before I have to just wait 10 minutes, and then we've got to change my mum because we want the food to go down. So I've got time, I think, for reading out another one. And the next one is from Stephen Taylor, and I just want to say salute to Carl Todd and hope he gets well. He's put, hi Delboy, I hope you've had a good week and your health is improving and your mum is stable. So again, I think you know. I found some old issues of Zap magazine in my loft this week, and it reminded me that you went to the Zap event a couple of years ago. So I thought I'd ask, what other magazines did you used to collect? Were there ever anything for the VIC-20, which was one of your favourite computers? Wow, you know me so well, Stephen. Do you think it's better the way things are now, where you can use the internet to find all your information about games, or do you miss the days of going to WH Smith and buying your monthly mags? Have you been following me? How did you know that I went to WH Smith to get my magazines? Lucky guess. But just to answer a couple of questions there, I did go to a Zap event, and the VIC-20 was one of my favourite computers. I've talked about my history before. And I, because I worked at Lloyd's, was very interested in computers, and they used to get business magazines, sort of weekly computer magazines. But the magazines I used to get was Your Computer, Personal Computer Weekly, Computer and Video Games, Computer Weekly. Some of those were business ones, which I didn't get, but I bought Computer and Video Games and Your Computer. Now, when I was buying magazines for myself, I did buy something called Vic Computing. It was a very early magazine. And I also bought a bi-weekly magazine that told you all about computers. In fact, Mainmeister did a whole series of this periodical that you put together in a binder, and you'd certainly know a little bit about what a CPU is and what a keyboard is. And the very first issue had a list of all the computers that you could buy, the price, and some of the things that were pros and cons about them. And it listed the Yorick and the MSX and the Ataris, 800, 400, the Commodore VIC-20 and the 64. The Spectrum was there. It was really, really good. It's sort of like that Top Trump thing that I showed off about a year or so back. I'm not quite sure where I put them, to be quite honest. Oh, there we go, look. Home computer cards that listed the computers like that. I don't know if I can put that in a sort of a place. I don't think it'll work very well. Maybe if I go to overhead cam, that might show up better. Yeah, so a bit like that. So it'd tell you about the CPU, the RAM, the resolution, the palette, the year, that sort of thing. So I bought Vic Computing, and then of course it all exploded, didn't it? Zap came out, Zap 64. And at that point, that was my main mag, but I would on occasion still buy Computer and Video Games, Your 64, and Commodore User. And then when the Amiga came out, the very first one I bought was Amiga Computing. Now, I bought my Amiga in 1985, and any information that I wanted generally was in the weekly periodicals, you know, the Personal Computer Weekly. But that was the first big one for the Amiga that I remember getting. And I then bought things like the One and Edge. And when I moved away from the Amiga, I bought PC Zone. You know, I bought PC magazines like PC Zone. I'm not quite sure what the other periodicals were called. They were monthly, but yeah, I never really bought Witch magazine or anything like that. Too many things about food blenders and stuff in it, and watches that were way too expensive. So yeah, I bought Amiga computing. I think there was a Your Amiga. I think Commodore 64 started covering the Amiga as well. But I stopped buying Zap very much by the time we got to 1990, maybe 1991. I didn't see the end of that magazine anyway. I will say that. But I tell you what, the Zap magazine is the class one. The one that I can even, it's like you can remember the covers. And I can only remember certain covers for computer and video games, stuff like that. They weren't drawn by Oliver Frey. I think that was what it was. They stood out. The Zap magazine and the Crash magazine stood out on the racks, you know, when you went into W.H. Smith. So you were instantly pulled to that. It did take up a big section, actually, of W.H. Smith's computer section. Everything was in sections. You had news, computers, you know, household, you know, for, I don't know, Country House and Hound or whatever it is, or Stable Monthly, or Fishing Weekly, that sort of stuff. Everything was zoned off. And I'd go to the comics section just to see what the British periodicals were, and I'd look at the computer ones. The science section as well I might peruse over sometimes. Anybody that bought the comics would know there they were, the little Commando book at the bottom, the Beano and Dandy 2000 AD, thrown in with a few Panini Marvel comics. Maybe some DC was there as well. But there was the girls as well. They were catered for with Bunty and, you know, as a girls magazine. And then you also had things like Lookin' and all of that sort of stuff. They were all there in that section. And I must have spent a good while looking at those before I bought them. So I hope that answers that question. Thanks very much, Stephen. And I hope I've mentioned a good set of magazines. You say here, I'm just off to annoy a couple of Arsenal fans that I know, which should be a lot of fun. So obviously he's written that after the result, knowing about Arsenal. Have a good week. Best wishes, Stephen. And to be quite honest, matey, that's cheered me up no end. Thinking about all of that really is a joy and great to add to my diary. It's told anybody that looks at this exactly what I used to do. So thanks very much. So I'm going to check on my mother now and see whether she needs changing. And then I'm going to be back and I'll get into the right place for that now and say for you, it's seconds, won't be long. So mum's okay. Pad changed. Wonderful. Having a cup of tea. So we get to say salute and move on to Denny. Yeah, it's quite a long one, this one. That's always pleasing to me. It says, "Hiya, mate. Nice to catch up yesterday evening. It's been too long again. But as per normal, my week has been anything else but normal. As we spoke about, yeah, like I said, everybody's got their own lives, and it was wonderful to speak to Denny. He was on a bit of a break from work, which is well deserved for him, and in a nice sort of like weather conditions, and it gives him hopefully a little bit of time to do some of his hobbies. And I know that he loves to do restoration work on cassette tapes, you know, gaming boxes, that sort of thing. And absolutely wonderful. I've seen the output from him in my Discord, and it's just wonderful what he's done. So he's put nice week weather-wise again, surprisingly on my week off too. It can, and excuse my French, piss down for all I care from Monday when I go back to work. That's what he's saying. So it's a great week, and as far as he's concerned, he can rain from next week. AI, he's put right off the bat. I love it. I absolutely love it. I'm not an artist in the physical sense, but my imagination can now be put into an AI program and produce the kind of pictures I'm after. AI also is helping me to restore a lot of old cassette covers from the early 8 and 16-bit titles. Admittedly, I still have to do manual work on the restorations, but it's cut the workload down by half. I'm also enjoying expanding the restored covers into thumbnails for videos. I know Del watched the saturation. Yes, I told him about the saturation levels. It has been rather hot this week, so the people in that one thumbnail must have been catching too many sun rays. LOL. Lots of laugh out loud. AI, we all know we're a divided nation on AI. I'm in agreement a little bit with Denny. My artist of choice is John Romita Sr. And if I was doing a lot of work on showing his work off, it'd be very difficult to get 16:9 thumbnails for something that he mostly did portrait work on. Now, if you wanted to do, therefore, an image of him, it would have to be either zoomed in, where you don't see the artistry, or you can pan out to see the full artistry, but you'd have nothing on the left and right. Now, you can do lots of things, move everything to the left and try and extend things to the right, but that's difficult. Or you can have things in the center and expand things out slightly left and right. Now, a lot of his work would be building work, perspective, angles going down to a focal point. And unless you're a draftsman, it's very, very difficult to do that. If you try and expand it out, the faces turn fat and all of that sort of stuff. AI is quite good at being able to draw what could have been on the right-hand side. And if it's a thumbnail, I don't see the problem with it. Now, if I was using AI to do that for a poster that I wanted to sell, wrong. Totally wrong. John Romita did part of it, AI did the other bit, and I'm trying to profiteer from it. Wrong. Totally wrong. Anything that you're going to profiteer from, yeah, I have a on this subject. And we all know what I'm totally against, which is this videos, that you see of Bruce Lee fighting Godzilla and all of this sort of stuff, and using AI to have a person appear in a film that he was never originally in, taking money away from the extras that person well deserved to have. I must admit, with some of the work I've done on films, I've taken mostly clip art. Now, I've got thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of clip art that we used to get in the 90s and early 2000s. So many machines that you bought came with a clutter of discs. I'm sure people remember you got Encyclopedia Britannica or film databases from Microsoft that was full of art and videos and stuff. And they don't produce those anymore. The copyright still remains with the holders. So I always put any original art that I've used is copyright of the original owner. But most of that stuff in the past is all portrait, and the clip art free. So what is wrong with me getting a clip art of, say, a disheveled detective, a picture of a chalk outline and altering its perspective so it looks like it's on the ground, or a scene in the background of a crime being taken place, which is all clip art, joining it all together to make a thumbnail? Nothing wrong with it. I don't see the problem. And AI can do lovely logos. So if I can't get a nice picture of, say, the word of the film, and because it's at an angle and I want it to be straight or whatever, Photoshop can be used, but it's hard to also get rid of the background image. There is things like Magic Eraser, but it does leave jagged edges and you have to smooth it out. AI will do that. And to be quite honest, I have no problem with it. But I am totally in agreement with a lot of AI haters on how it's used. And you can't opt out. Work is constantly telling me I've got to use AI. I am against it if I don't want to use it. Is there a policy that I've signed that says I have to use it? My emails, do I need to use AI on my emails? There's a spell checker. There's a grammar checker. They're all inbuilt into Word and Outlook. Do I need AI to make a bullet list of something that's, I mean, it's just a big subject and something that a lot of people now try and avoid because they don't want to take away the beliefs of somebody else. And I totally agree with that, you know. Right. So it continues here. There is so much going on for AI, and I'm fed up with the constant whining about how bad it is using terms like AI slop. The phrase now is as bad as deep dive. One uses it, everyone uses it, and it becomes a copy of each other. Yet AI is bad. Yeah, I get that. Myself and my old man watched 28 years later The Bone Temple. Got to admit it was a lot better than expected and rather gruesome in places. Definitely worth a watch. And I tell you what, a lot of people have the same consensus. I think they were saying that they were concerned after watching the first one that the second one was going to be much the same. But I think a lot of people were happy that the quality changed, the lenses that they used changed, and it turned out to be a goodish film. I certainly enjoyed it. Talking of things being better than expected, The Running Man was pretty decent until the end, as you said. One thing I did hate was the cover versions of songs in the film. They were absolutely awful. Yeah, I dislike most of the time another band that you've never heard of singing a song that you've heard for years and years in the 80s and 90s, and it's pretty poor quality. I'm with you on that. Question for this week. What are the most iconic openings to films in your opinion? Oh, wow. Opening of films. Well, there's one that comes to mind, and I actually saw people reenact it at Universal Studios, and that is Raiders of the Lost Ark. What an opening, you know, going through into a cave, you know, spikes coming out of walls. He gets to the plinth. He has to choose and get the right amount of sand for the idol that he was trying to get and put it back on the plinth without altering the weight, and then trying to get out of the cave because he had got the wrong weight. He took too much sand out, trying to get out. What a fantastic opener. An easy one for me to think out as well is Blade Runner. That miniature work of flying over that sort of like post-apocalyptic city, flying over with the flames coming out. It looked very industrial. That was brilliant. An old one that would be divided because it does look antiquated and old now is 2001, A Space Odyssey. That starts off with the dawn of man, the obelisk, the chucking of bones up into the air, which then goes into space. That's brilliant. One that my dad and I constantly agreed with, but we disassembled it quite a bit, was Once Upon a Time in the West, with the harmonica man turning up at the train station with the other men waiting for him to get off the train. And it was lots of Leone's close-up on eyes, faces, wide shots. Absolutely wonderful. A game that I played early on would have been Call of Duty, and it did the opening scene of Saving Private Ryan, the beach landings. And everybody has talked about that film to death, the opening being incredibly gruesome, hard to watch, but fantastic. Well-deserved Oscar for the Oscars that it got of that film. And one that's memorable to me, probably not to others, is the opening of Planet of the Apes, where you got Charlton Heston talking about his dislike of man, where they were, what year they were in, the feasibility of space travel, and looking at his fellow colleagues already resting up for the long suspended animation for their journey, and the then event, a crash landing on the planet, which was done on a budget. So you basically saw spinning images, mostly, rather than seeing a ship coming out of the sky and landing eventually in the water. But it were, to me, with the titles, the opening sequence is absolutely fantastic. And I think it was the same sort of effects that Star Trek the Motion Picture had. Oil in water for the warping effect for what the space journey was, which looked wonderful when I saw it as a child. And I suppose I could have mentioned Star Trek the Motion Picture with the Klingon battle, but I think there have been opening sequences in, say, something like Star Wars with the battle cruiser that would probably supersede the Klingon battle, even though it was stunning when I watched it. So hopefully there's quite a few films there, and those are the ones that I would choose as openings to films. But I tell you what, Bob would probably turn that into a community question and say, what are your favourite 10 opening sequences from films, what those sequences were, and why they are quintessentially in your mind when you've been asked that question. But I'll leave that to Bob to mull over and see whether that's something you'd like to continue, or if you wish to, put it in your comments. That'd be interesting. You then put take care as always and say hello to your mother for me, and you know full well, salute, that's going to happen. And speaking of Bob Art, that's who the next one is. And he's put, listened along as normal, Del. Holiday has started now, even though I'm just in the house, not away anywhere fancy. My car is getting fixed, so I'm carless at the moment. As normal, it is costly. Yeah, isn't it just? Anyway, question for next time. I don't think I have ever seen you ever wear a hat. Do you own any hats? And would it be something you normally wore? Bit of a silly one, but it popped into my mind. And I tell you what, let's see if I can answer that question visually. Just bear with me. Now, in the past, I've had caps, plenty of caps. You've seen them all, the baseball caps. Ones like this. This one's from the red, yellow and black piano tour. So I went to that. Vicarage Road, look, 18th of June, 2005. There you are. I went to a concert then. And I've been to Planet Hollywood, and I've been to, hard rock cafes, and all of those different places. I've bought a t-shirt, a cap. So I've got plenty of those. My dad used to wear a flat cap. He used to go and do his bailiff work, and he'd put a cloth flat cap like you'd wear in Yorkshire. and it looked well on him. I don't think hats and caps really work for me, so that answers that. And I have tried. I mean, here's one look. I don't know what people think. Bloody awful, I should think. I've always sort of like tried to keep the sun, you know, off the back of my head, and I've bought hats and caps, but I've never really done them or think that they look good on me. I've kept my hair like it is and just done that. But you know, hats like that have got breathing holes. They're quite good. And you know, I don't know why I got this one. I've not worn it very much. I haven't even worn took the tab off of it. You know, does it work when it's on its side? No. Does it work down? No. Does it work brim up? Possibly, slightly. But I just don't think hats suit me. And I think most people are going to agree. But thank you very much for the question. Absolutely marvellous. These things suit me better. Caps, you know. Don't think I could put this one on. But, you know, I think everybody can rock a cap. You know what I mean? This one I'd have to adjust the straps, but it's not one of those Velcro ones. It's a proper clasp. So can't really adjust that one. But there you go. Bit of hair going up and down there. I think that answers your question. And I'll move to my friend Ian Hill, The Ramblings. There we go. And he's put, "Hi Del Boy, I hope you and your mum are doing okay and just getting through the week the best way you can. Also, hope your own health issues are showing signs of improvement. Very slowly, but yes. I'm happy now that the intense heat has gone. Feel cooler and more comfortable. What would the British do if they didn't talk about the weather?" Said pretty much as much at the beginning. And I have to say, it hasn't cooled down that much, but it's overcast today slightly, but it's still bloody warm in here. I don't know. It's something about having a computer and a couple of monitors and all that turned this into a bloody oven in here. My own health is okay, making sure I don't go outside. I know the intense heat can affect my asthma. It's not just the cold. My chest also be affected by the heat. Normally, I never feel thirsty, but when it's like this, I have to drink more. I'm even drinking water, which I struggle to drink. It's what I drink, mate, water. I'm not quite sure what you drink, tea, coffee, but I'm taking it soft drinks or cordial. Film highlights this week include Hang 'em High, 1968, which had Clint Eastwood in the lead role. I enjoyed it a lot because it was like a traditional Western. Though the spaghetti Westerns can be enjoyable, I like to watch these less stylized films. Clint Eastwood is one of the greatest living actors and directors, I think. The other film that stood out was 1 Hour Photo, 2002, starring Robin Williams. I like that film. Bit of a division on that one, though. Who gives such a wonderful performance of a sad, creepy man. He works on the film processing service and loves his job. It is many ways his life. So the consequences for him losing his job are devastating. He has become interested in an unhealthy way with a mother and son. It's a film I like to watch. Yeah, and it was the start of a trilogy of dark films that Robin Williams did, and it's a film that I actually liked. I think, was it Insomnia and something about Death of Smoochie was the other one. Can't quite remember. So my question this week, are there things around which within 10 years could well disappear and become obsolete? Are there things, so items? Now, I asked my sister this, and I sort of like agreed with lots of hers, but I think I got the question wrong when I asked it to her, because I didn't say the word things, and she was talking more about medical stuff. And I agreed with her. She said chemotherapy will be obsolete in 10 years. And there's a possibility on that. I hope there is. Anybody that has chemotherapy knows just what a horrible thing it is. A needed thing for cancer, but its effects are devastating, and it makes you tired and slow, and it destroys, I think, slowly your innards, from my perspective anyway. But things, I think with my mindset at the moment, which is 3D printing, for which I mentioned in a blog before that I had the opportunity to buy a 3D printer from Steve, and I'd have loved to have had the money to do it, and I'd surely like to have one. 3D printing might make injection molding obsolete in 10 years. I have a true belief that that possibly could happen. I'm sure there's a lot of people that say out there, nah, it's been around too long, we use it too much, all of that sort of stuff. But 3D printing is coming on really, really quickly, and all the different filaments that you can use, I would not put a bet on somebody saying that will make plastic obsolete. I would have to think seriously and go, do you know what? There's a 50-50 chance. And I probably therefore wouldn't take the bet. But one thing that I think might be obsolete is shopping bags from Sainsbury's, Aldi, all of that. The plastic bags is what I'm talking about. I think they may become obsolete, along with, I hope, plastic bottles and all that sort of stuff. Now, here's one that is, again, divisive. With the Royal Mail being as bad as I think it is, and emails becoming the norm to get your receipts when you purchase something, and all the junk mail that you get with social media, could the letterbox on a door for the front of the house become obsolete? Something that we've relied on, never talked about, because it's just there, could become obsolete, couldn't it? The letterbox. And of course, the one that I think most people will agree with, newspapers. They're nearly obsolete now. You still get them. We get one for my mum. But Kindles, tablets, how we read the news now through YouTube, television, radio, is the paper really needed anymore? The printed word in newspapers? And we are talking 10 years. So we are talking 2036. I mean, I'll be towards my 70s when that happens. And I'm in my 50s now. That could happen. I totally believe that could happen. So my sister came up with a really, really good one, but it's about things rather than it's not. So I'll thank my sister later on for that comment, and say that was an interesting one. And I think a lot of people will agree with that. All the best wishes to you and have a reet grand time is what my friend Ian has said. And to be quite honest, please go and have a look at all these people that have got channels. Now, so far we've had Ian Hill, The Ramblings, Wee Bob, he's got a channel. Denny's got a channel, and that's it so far. But there will be others shortly. Why not go and have a look at some of these? Some of them are written already in my description of this blog, but I always read out their name, and it wouldn't take you much to YouTube. Look at it. Ian's got a fantastic channel. And on Wednesday, he gives me the great delight of being invited week on week to be sort of a co-host to our little talk. And it's on a Wednesday at 8 o'clock. And we love it when people come in because it's like a chat in a pub. But we'll talk about Ian a little bit later on because I'll be reading out some of the stuff he's done in his channel just this week. So, salute, my friend. Thank you so much. And the last one has come from my friend Colin Jones, aka Ponder. Always wonderful to get him. You may notice I had a bit of a jar then. Even coughing makes my back hurt. But he's put, I guess you are now ready to return to work, at least psychologically. Yeah, I think psychologically is the word, and I don't think I'm that far away from going back to work, and that's giving me joy, to be quite honest. Opening up isn't a weakness, it's quite the opposite. It takes strength. Top call out for help. Glad to see you're more into a routine, and sending my regards to your mum as always. Yeah, I've always thought that it was a strength, but I do believe others see it as a weakness and capitalize on it. That's all I was trying to get across there. I do hold my heart on my sleeve a little bit. Working from home is impossible for me for obvious reasons. Yeah, that's pretty obvious. If anybody hasn't guessed already, he works on the trains. That is difficult. Personally, the environment at home is too chaotic to make working from home feasible anyway. Yes, I've seen many of your videos, and I do know that you broadcast from your kitchen. So that must be pretty darn difficult as a main room in your house that everybody needs to use. Plus you go outside, I think, from that door. So yeah, that's going to be hard. Reboots, AI. People are losing the ability to think and or create for themselves. Totally agree with that. Like I said, when it comes to film, I have a totally different perspective to AI. Not seen June yet, though. My God, man. 983, you haven't seen that one? Well, it could happen. This one does stand out because I've never been done right in the past. A very ambitious and very immersive story. Yes, anybody who knows the history of the original Dune, go and have a look. There's a major documentary on YouTube. It just tells you why the director, David Lynch, took his name off of it and refused to talk about it for years and years and years. And he didn't want it going out, really, because he wanted to do the book justice. And the film would have been 3 hours. I think splitting it in two would have been better than total rewrite, but that's just me. I actually bought a twin C2N adapter and a second cassette deck back in the day. Also had an azimuth tool. Good adaptation to my question. Yeah, I hope so. And that cable that you're talking about, I soldered it. I made it. It was like a little breadboard, really. The holes were all there. It was pretty easy to source the chips. It came as a kit. And I think it was probably the last soldering job I ever did. So we are going back to 1984, 5. Yeah. So you can imagine I was a scrawny kid, to be quite honest. For me, I threaded my bike chain wrong, and it was a quick link. So when I clicked it in and realised what I'd done, I couldn't split the chain to fix it without the tool. This is his question for last week. You do pronounce a few things oddly, don't I? Just standard English words I get wrong. But there's only so far you can take nitpicking without being annoying. Cough. A logarithm. Cough. Only 1 cough. Yeah, okay. I get it. Batteries not included is up there in my favourite movies list. Yeah, that's, it is somebody else's opinion. Roy, his name is. Blue Roy Movies, I think is the title. And, yeah, probably a bit over the top of the animal things. Running out of ideas for questions, so here's an obscure one. What is your favourite UK warship of any era? Oh, wow. Now, the one thing I'm not very good at is names of people and names of cars, boats, planes. I'm never going to be very good at. TV, Films, I'm not too bad at. But let's have a think. I think, and I saw it in a film recently, HMS Victory. I think it's a 17th century boat, but it was in its lifetime. It was used as for the Napoleonic Wars. Yeah, pretty sure of that. Then you got HMS Dreadnought. Now I think this is a World War I warship. I love the name Dreadnought. That's the reason why I chose that one. Can't think of any more. I think there is HMS Queen Elizabeth, but not sure. I'm pretty sure some of the boats or ships and warships even are maxed out with royalty, you know. So I think that's something. And that ends that. So we will move on shortly. So speaking of the Scarlet Spider earlier, here's the Scarlet Spider. Don't know if you can see that. This was something that I was going to do as a video one day. I wanted to show what AliExpress sell as knockoffs. And compared to the proper models. Now, this Scarlet Spider has got at the bottom corner a little symbol called CT. It means it's a knockoff because it comes from a company that has bought what they consider to be seconds from the main company that makes these models. But the difference is this Scarlet Spider in its proper model is over £100. And on AliExpress, you can get these for about 20 or so pounds, right? About 22 quid. This is number 186 in the line. It's Amazing Spider-Man, the Scarlet Spider. On the back, it shows you the different positions, the articulation that you can get. If you look inside there, you can see it's got different heads, different hands that you can put on. It's got fists on at the moment, but if you look in the top right-hand corner below that head, you'll see different hands, like web hands. It does come with webs, and it comes with a stand, so you can make it look like he's web swinging. You can make it so that he's just standing upright. I bought this because I wanted to show a proper one, which I do have, and a couple of knockoffs, and you decide, would you buy this? Because AliExpress is well known for knockoffs. You can see this has come from China. Even from the label at the bottom, it just says Scarlet Spider CT. And there is no Marvel symbol anywhere to be seen. So it is a knockoff. But that's what the Scarlet Spider looks like, just there. And he's a clone. Although in the clone story, there was a question mark on whether the clone was the real Peter Parker. That was the point. So, hope you've enjoyed that little look there. Maybe you thought that video would have been nonsense for me to do. Maybe you'd like to see me do it. I've got quite a few of these, and I could show it off. You know, what my thinking was. I've only ever got two figures that fit into their proper authenticated Marvel figures. I've got about 5 from AliExpress of Spider-Man in different ways. The black costume, the normal Spider-Man, Spider-Man from the films. Bought a couple. I think I've got a Gwen Stacy as well. She's Gwen. She's Ghost Spider. Yeah, that's it. Or Spider Gwen. It's difficult to say which one that they go with now. But I can show those off. And you can go for yourself, would you spend 20 quid? Or would you spend 100 quid if you were into these types of figures? And I don't think that they're so bad that what is a grown man doing with an action figure. I mean, my friend Kevin down the rabbit hole has got Battlestar Galactica figures. So, and to be quite honest, this was done again before my mother's health problems. They, you know, I tried to do different types of content for my channel. So it might have been an interesting one to do. It would have been classed as in my statue line when I was buying the porcelain statues that you've seen a couple of in my previous views. But we're moving on now to Watched on YouTube. And as you know, under Watched on YouTube, there are 4 that I always watch. They are This Week in Retro, Tech Moan, Gadget Show, and Chronologically Gaming. And each one of those had a video to do this week. This Week in Retro was split into 3, plus the housekeeping and the community question. But the titles were Give Us a Hand, Mr., Run Almost Every Operating System, and From 2D to 3D and Back. And they were all actually very interesting this week, although the Give Us a Hand, Mr., because the RMC channel, which it's twinned with, had shown off a handheld version of the Mr. in its very, very embryo form. You know, it's a very primitive form. Repeating it for 20 minutes in the This Week in Retro, I didn't really get any extra thoughts or feelings about it. So to me, I listened and knew pretty much what they were going to say. But still, can't fault This Week in Retro. It's very entertaining and I watch it each week. Then we've got Tech Moan. He did Asteroids Countertop Arcade Cabinet Basic Fun ? That's the name of the video. And it was really nice to see asteroids again, and for a person that doesn't really do gaming that much. He does mostly hi-fi equipment, boom boxes, car dash cams, all of that sort of stuff. And very rare does he do gaming, although I know he's done a pinball machine once. He ended up by turning around and saying what the pros and cons were, for which it was happy for me to report were mostly pros. But it was where he was going to stick it, you know, to play. I think he missed a trick. If anybody looks behind me, you'll see I've got a little plinth. That's because I want to have ventilation for the device that's below it. He could have used one of those plinths and put this on it, and he would be at the right height, because what he was saying was, because he doesn't have anywhere to put it, and because if you put it away you'll probably never play it again, if it's in your face and in a place that you can go to, that would be better. And he chose a place that was on top of one of his receivers, and I was just thinking to myself, add a plinth, mate. You don't have to say anything else. You could answer your own question. Get a plinth. So I was sort of screaming at the channel at that point. The Gadget Show I had a little bit of a beef with as well. They did 2 videos this week. Has Nintendo got it wrong 1 year of the Switch 2? And the other one is, do the 2000s bring the greatest gadgets? And that last one I'm sure I've seen before. It was done in a live. I'm sure they released it as a single video, and then they're doing it again. And I'm just going, why? But it was far back, so it's difficult for me to sort of like check in the timescale that I had. So there is that. And then Chronologically Gaming did December 1982 continued. Part of that was a game called Air Raid on the Atari 2600. He's now entering 1983, so there'll be less Atari 2600 titles to finish with. But finish they did. So there is that. So just a moment for me. And moving on my little pad,
I've written something that I've been following all week, and to be quite honest, it's not something I'm really interested in, but I got interested quite quickly. The channel was called Reckless Ben, but there are many, many, many others. And it's about, and I've called it the saga of bricks and minifigs. You just need to search bricks and minifigs and you'll see what this is all about. And I got interested in it because it's about collectors. So not just, although it's about Lego, it's about collectors. And there's this guy who collected the biggest, or that's what they say, the biggest collection of Lego in Star Wars history. And he's dying, or that's what I'm led to believe. And his son took his entire Lego collection into a store that's called Bricks and Minifigs. And they gave him a contract that said that all of his collection was still in ownership of him, but they were happy to sell it on his behalf and get a commission, and they would get a commission for anything that was sold, but he would get the money. So what you have to understand is that Bricks and Minifigs is a franchise. I think what happened is that corporate found out that it was the biggest collection, and they got rid of the managers. And I think what they mean by that, by doing that, is they invalidated the contract. So when the son went in to get the collection back or the money, they wouldn't give him the money or the collection, even though on social media they displayed his collection, made a big hoo-ha of it. And so this guy, Reckless Ben, made it his mission to get the Lego back or the money. And it's just crazy what went on. The law is an ass. And what was going on in regards to corporate and the police is sickening, to be quite honest. And I'll let you go and look, because I could spend the whole of this blog talking about it, and we haven't really got the time for it. Other stuff I watched was Slope's Game Room, which I've watched on occasion. He did an episode called Cancelled Deleted Games You Can't Play Anymore. And 4 of the 5 examples I played. And that's why I got involved in it. There are serious games that I used to play, and it's mental why they were stopped or cancelled, and all of your time just wiped away. Now, I look back at that time and go, I had my fun, but there are bits in me that go, I want to go back. And for some of the games, and I only say some of the 5, you can't. There is one that came back this year, but it's not the same as it was, but it has come back. So I don't think he talked about that comeback much in his video, if at all. You can check for yourself. The company was called Gazillion. They brought out something called Marvel Superheroes. It was a sandbox type game with role-playing elements. It had a fantastic response when it first came out. It started to die a little bit when they closed it down, but it's the reason they closed it down that is terrible. And what happened to the employees, worse. So that's a good one to watch. Another one that I watched was Muhammad Ali, The True Story. That's the channel. They showed an episode called The Bedside and Death of Joe Frazier. And this was interesting to me because the rivalry and hatred between Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier is legendary. But there is a time where you're on your deathbed, and if Joe Frazier says to his family, I want to see Muhammad Ali, They really do need to allow that to happen, and they did. And Muhammad Ali wanted to say goodbye. He made his apologies. They sat alone together and chatted, which the family wouldn't know about. But for what the family did hear, which was allowed by both parties, is truly moving. And that's why I watched that. That was brilliant. Then there was a channel called Beloved Old Britain that did an episode called Why the BBC Banned It Ain't Half Hot Mum. And I think most people would know why it's banned. But to ban the writers to even talk about it, or to make it awkward for them to talk about, when it was their life work, and when it was shown, 17 million plus people watched it on a weekly basis, it's terrible to not show it, ban it, all of that sort of stuff. It's almost like an embarrassment. But 17 million people watched it. It's just something that you learn. To wipe it off the face of the planet as if it never happened is wrong, in my opinion. Then I watched Century 21 Films. It's very much a nostalgia thing, this. I watched Thunderbirds R60 behind the scenes documentary part 1 to 4. And that was very interesting because it showed Jerry Anderson going to the World's Fair in New York before Thunderbirds was even thought of in their heads. So this was very interesting. I really did like that documentary. I love documentary type things. It's great. And then the last one under watched on YouTube was Retro or Bust. That was the channel. And they did The Toys That Betrayed Us. And it was interesting watching that because in one of those toys that betrayed us was Big Track. And I have to sort of agree what they said. You got to Christmas, you opened a big box, it was the thing you asked for, it was Big Track, a big electronic toy that you programmed to go around your house, right? Or do moony type things, right? You know, a vehicle that could be on the moon, or, you know, another planet, or a construction thing on the planet Earth. But programming it was bloody hard. Making it go forward, then turning, then right, and then forward. You had to program in the lengths for the journey that you wanted it to do. And it was a bugbear. But did it betray me? It did everything that the adverts said, in my opinion. For the majority, maybe there's a couple of things they didn't cover, or covered but hid. But on the most part, I was super excited and very, very happy with my toy. Well, for about 6 months, and then I moved on. But it wasn't like it was days and I forgot about it. We move on to, I've gone over too many pages, to film, TV and soundtrack YouTube. And I like this section because it talks about the movies, really. And my friend Ian Hill, The Ramblings, is at the top of the page, because he's something that I do a live with. He's one of my closest friends and has a fantastic channel. Just look at what he did this week. He did my top 5 action films done as shorts, so they're under 2 minutes, 1934 to 1940. So he did 6, and he's probably done a 7th today. Doctor Who review of the Macra Tower, a Blu-ray that I've got in steelbook format, animated, a very divisive story, but I got a lot of enjoyment when I watched it. X-Files review season 6 episode 13. Now I've got the whole lot of the X-Files and I haven't watched it in years, so it's nice to reminisce with him as he explains that particular episode. What I have watched, episode 20. Yes, he's done for the last 20 weeks. A section where he tells people what he's watched that week. That's always interesting. SFX magazine review, June 2026. So it's got to that point where SFX magazine has just come out. He did a review of it. And then he did a live with me on Wednesday, which I had so much fun with. Loved every second of it.
So that's what came out of my friend Ian Hill, The Ramblings. But I've got equally others that I go to and watch. I saw Movie Collector. He did the Wilton Home Cinema video showing off how what's his name? Wilton, yeah. How Mr. Wilton had set up his own home cinema and also left it in his will for his sons. So that was really good. Then we moved to Just Joshings. He did a couple of shorts. He did Backrooms, When a Director Understands Space. That was quite interesting, based on that film as a review. And also he did Star Wars is Dead, based on the film The Mandalorian and Grogu. Probably got the pronunciation of that wrong. I haven't seen that film yet. Whether Star Wars is Dead may be based on your own feelings, or whether you've seen that film or previous films that they would have appeared in. So this was their own movie this time. I don't believe it got favourable reviews, but I might be wrong in that. But it was definitely an interesting listen along from Just Joshings. So we move on to Mondo Chelevic Movies. And I couldn't really see anything from him this week. It might be that he's done some stuff in its editing or for members only. And I mentioned Jim Jam movies here because I up until when I was doing my little list, I didn't see anything. But when I was speaking to my friend Denny last night, he said he was on holiday in Vegas. And literally that evening, when I was writing this down, a couple of upcoming videos showed up saying that he's doing some videos of Vegas in 2 parts. So I'm quite looking forward to that next week. So I thought I'd give that a bit of a mention, because I'd really like people to see Jim Jam's videos. They're really quite good. And then, of course, my friend David Mansell did a little video of 10 favourite action films of his. And it's always nice to see people's collection like David's. It's very eclectic. So it's nice to see a collection together of action films from different periods. And they could be something that you also would have in your top 10. And then, of course, Ian mentioned a guy last week to me called Roy, who's got a channel called Blue Roy Movies. Get the pun there? Blu-ray. Thought that was quite good. I watched quite a few now of his weekly watches. But he also did a movie gifts and pickups, as many of these channels do. And sometimes they're done really well. Sometimes I don't go into them because they're literally just holding up a video and say, this is what I've got. But Blue Roy goes into great detail of what he likes. So that I enjoyed as well. And while we're talking about soundtracks, I got out a few of my soundtracks because I was thinking about doing a video on the motion picture soundtrack, and I pulled out of my collection a couple. Here we go. You'll see I was struggling there because I wanted to get things out the way of my Star Trek the motion picture soundtrack, which I bought many years ago. And you can even see the import license that's on the back of this, and the black tape that covers some of the copyright infringements that they'd have with that license. They had to cover up certain stuff. It's a very basic soundtrack. I've got the vinyl of this as well. And then I wanted to show it off with the 25th anniversary collection, which I bought years later from HMV. And sort of like mark it up against what the original one looked like and what this one does. This is still in the cellophane, but you can see here it's slightly different look because it's got a holographic slip cover, and on the back it tells you
what you get with this, and you can sort of mark it up with the original soundtrack, and it is slightly expanded. And then, of course, I showed off on Wednesday's live stream the last soundtrack that I bought, which was a limited edition, which is free CDs. And these expanded scores make collectors buy them, especially if it's a track of a soundtrack that you really love. But some of the cues in there are next to nothing. Are they worth buying or not worth buying? And I was thinking about doing a video on that, because that's just one example of soundtracks that I have in my collection. I've got hundreds, in different formats: tape, vinyl, CD, even Blu-ray has some DTS versions, and I've got some SACD CDs to go with my player that I've bought. So it could have been something that I could have done. But anyway, that's what I was listening to, the motion picture this week, and umming and ahhing on whether I should do a video or not. Give me a note if you think that I should. And the last page is Gaming and Tech YouTube, which is, as you know, my friends that have, joined my Discord, I've known for years, or have contacted me in various different ways and communication channels. Right at the top, we've got Down the Rabbit Hole, my friend from Canada, who did a couple of videos. He did Star Frontiers. I can't really read this very well. Dralasite Bubba's Ship Became a Life Lesson. Star Frontiers is a role-playing board type game, and I never played it, but it's always interesting to hear what your life experiences were playing something like this, because I was always into Dungeons and Dragons. It's just I never had enough friends to do it. And then he did an Xbox Hot Wheels stunt track with Mad Cat's steering wheel video. It's got this steering wheel, and he likes to show off whether it's worth buying and does it work with some of these older titles. This one just happened to be Hot Wheels. Really, really enjoyed that. Found that very fun. We move on to Robert's Retro Gaming. Same country, Canada, but totally different type of person. My God, this person, how many videos does he do a week? Fantastic job he does. Canadian royalty, I tell you. One of my go-to channels to listen to in the morning when I wake up. And just this week he did Dwarf Fortress Classic episode 40, Minecraft Play episode 195, and as I said, it's getting close to 200 episodes, and I'm just wondering what the 200th episode is going to look like. Pico 8 gameplay of a game called Beam. He's probably done another video today, by the way. The last one was that was on Sunday last week during my blog. Spectrum gameplay of something called Travel Through Time Volume 1. It was a racing game which Mainmeister showed a year or so back and looked absolutely impressive for a Spectrum game. My God. Not saying Spectrum games are bad looking, but that one was exceptional. C64 gameplay of Twin Tigers, which looked to me when I was watching it as a shoot-'em-up construction kit, and I had to look and found out that it was a public domain released game, but it was still a shoot-'em-up construction kit game, which I didn't really sort of like get across when I commented on it, but it was nice to get the clarity on it. That was good. And then of the Atari 8-bit games, he played Galactic Chase, Math Tutor, and Highway Duel, which were great to watch. Really fun. He does some great stuff. Definitely go over there if you can and have a little look. If you can, like and subscribe. Why not? Hopefully, people that are watching this, they like and subscribe this as well. But we're moving on to Steve Still Plays Games. An old friend of mine. Comments every now and again on here. We're still very close. And his channel is growing. And he did Dark Souls, episode 22 and 23, a rock hard game. Perseverance on this guy, amazing.
He did a BBC gameplay of Urine. Oh, God. I think it's Urine Aliens. Which looked like a Space Invader type game, I have to say. It was very good. I liked watching that. And an Atari update on a game that looked very much like Adventure, but it was called Oldie Gold. So that's old with an E at the end. Oldie or old. That was good. I enjoyed that because I enjoyed Adventure very much when back in the day I had that cartridge. Moving on to 20th Century Gaming, and he did a live stream on Friday playing Midnight Resistance amongst many others. And he did a quick test as well yesterday, very late in the day, 11 o'clock, just to test the waters for doing maybe a stream with multiple different computers. So that was good. I didn't see anything from Colin Jones, aka Ponder, this week, or Wee Bob, but I know that whatever they're doing at the moment, it must be work related, or they're editing for a big video that will be coming out, or maybe the Tubers Challenge or Mainmeister challenges are taking up their time. Whatever it is, I hope to see some videos from them next week if they can. Seb's Place brought out a video. He did a ZX Spectrum going home to Zap 64 ? What it was is for charity. They got this Spectrum and it's going around the world. It's ended up at Seb's Place, and he decided to take this Spectrum to be signed at the Zap 64 event that was a couple of weeks ago, and take some photographs with it and pass it on to the next bloke who's also going to do a walk around with this Spectrum. It's been everywhere. What a great idea. What a nice community thing to do. Marvellous. LFC Gamer and Vlogs did another blog, which is great because I love his blogs. It was dated the 28th of the 5th, 26. So it was just a couple of days ago. Got some great enjoyment with that. Definitely go and have a watch, a like and a subscribe. And Mainmeister did a couple of videos as well. He did a live stream of arcade games on Sunday, and he did 5 more new games for the Commodore 64, which is always good to see new games on old equipment. So that reaches the end of this blog, and just want to say thank you very much for watching. It's been a bit disjointed, but that's the way things are, because just checking up on my mum and my health, getting up out the chair, doing some stretching, that sort of thing. But hopefully you've persevered to this point to know that I love you all. Anybody that watches this, thank you very much. It really is appreciated. Getting the word out, listening to things that have been going on in my life. There's only one little thing to do, and that's just show a couple of things that came through on the post. I'm not sure if I showed this last week. It was season 2 of Fallout. I'm really looking forward to this. My friend Rocket Bunny has been talking about this non-stop and says it's really, really good. And I enjoyed the first season, and I've got the steelbooks of those. And then the steelbook of Doctor Who, the movie, came through. At last, really. It's the bridging Doctor Who story between the classic years and the new years. And so it's quite important. It's got several versions of this because it's been edited differently in America compared to the UK release. Both are on this with a load of extras. It fits in my collection like a glove, but I do recognise also that anything past the classic is not interesting, and totally get that. For me, it'll fit in my collection really quite well. And now it really is the end, so I'm going to say salute. I hope you all have a great rest of your weekend. Hope to see you next weekend. Don't work too hard. It's a long way now for another bank holiday in this country. Do what you can at work, but do remember there is a family life as well. And with that, salute. Thank you very much. I'll see you next week, and have a great time. Bye-bye.